On today's Star Wars Legends lore video, we'll be imagining a universe where Thrawn had joined the rebellion. Mitth'raw'nuruodo, commonly referred to as Thrawn, is one of the most beloved expanded universe characters, and for good reason. Thrawn, as written by Timothy Zahn, is intelligent, he's frightening, and most importantly, he's interesting. Thanks to him, the Thrawn trilogy successfully kicked off the post-Return of the Jedi Star Wars expanded universe. In those stories, Thrawn, who impressively rose to the rank of Grand Admiral within the Empire despite being a blue-skinned alien, attempts to defeat the New Republic and restore the Empire's rule within the galaxy. Although technically his faction was only one of many faced by the New Republic after the Empire's collapse, besides for the reborn Emperor, he was probably the greatest threat to the new government. This brings us to the topic of today's video. What if Thrawn had joined the rebellion? We'll be looking at this from two perspectives. In the first, we'll look at what if Thrawn had deserted the Empire and joined the rebellion sometime after the Battle of Yavin. Then at the end, we'll very briefly look at what if Thrawn had joined the rebels instead of the Empire. It should be noted that this entire video will be focused on the Legends version of Mitth'raw'nuruodo, so I won't be making references to Star Wars Rebels or the new Thrawn novel. Most of what I'm talking about in this video does come from the Thrawn trilogy, but I will make other references to Thrawn as he appears in the Hand of Thrawn duology and in the Outbound Flight. Let's get started with our first question. What if Thrawn defected from the Empire about 2 years after the Battle of Yavin before becoming Grand Admiral? I think a useful way to gauge Thrawn's effectiveness is to look at the similarities between his campaign against the New Republic and the Rebel Alliance's campaign against the Galactic Empire. In both of these scenarios, a very small fighting force was trying to overthrow a much larger government. When Thrawn attacked the New Republic, he had at most a dozen or two ships. In most cases, he had his single star destroyer and several other escort ships. His numbers were inflated to a degree with the location and capture of the Katana fleet. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that for most of the campaign, Thrawn was chronically underarmed. That didn't stop him from nearly taking down the New Republic, and he may have actually done the job had he not been betrayed by his Noghri bodyguard Rook. During the campaign, Thrawn showed that he was almost unnaturally skilled in the areas of resource management, ship acquisition, hit and run tactics, and general strategy. He was such a threat that many years after his death, just the rumor of his return was enough to almost cripple the New Republic from the inside. The point which I'm getting at here is that the tactics used by Thrawn during his campaign against the New Republic were very similar to those used by the Rebel Alliance against the Empire. Not only that, but several of the actions that he took on his own accord would have actually benefited the rebels. For example, his use of Jedi battle meditation and the way that he spread out New Republic forces by hitting multiple targets at the same time. The Galactic Empire was at times spread even more thin than the New Republic due to the general inflexibility of their navy. Techniques like hitting multiple locations at the same time, crippling shipyards then leaving, would have been extremely successful against the Empire. His plan of not only securing a portion of the Black Fleet, but also training clones to man the ships was also genius and would have benefited the Rebel Alliance. I think it's also worth noting that Thrawn would likely thrive within the Alliance Navy. The Rebels focused on small, quick ships rather than massive dreadnoughts. In the new Thrawn book, the character lambasts the Empire for focusing so much energy on massive projects. Although technically the quote is from canon, I think it very much matches the thoughts of his Legends counterpart. The good thing about the Rebel fleet is that while they do have many of these small ships, they also have the heavy hitters, the Mon Calamari cruisers, which Thrawn could have used in certain situations. I think he would have been very careful not to waste them. I think Thrawn would have done two main things to bolster the Rebels' strength within the galaxy. The first is he would have likely tried to subjugate planets like he does to the New Republic in Star Wars Legends. The ultimate goal of this would have been gaining more ships and allies. He would have used blockades and other methods, all specifically based on the intricacies of the culture that he was facing off against. Secondly, and I think that this is very interesting, I think Thrawn would have tried to make use of Clone Wars era separatist ships. Thrawn spends half of his campaign against the New Republic trying to get a working clone army. When facing off against the Empire, I think Thrawn instead would have focused on acquiring not only separatist ships, but also battle droids and battle droid factories. The good thing about Confederate droids is that they can not only fight on the battlefield, but also man ships. I think that this would have been exceptionally valuable to the Rebel Alliance. In the Rebellion comics, we see that the Alliance was already using Providence-class cruisers, and we also know that on one occasion they attacked the Death Star using a Lucrehulk-class battleship. I think that Thrawn would continue what the Alliance was doing, but do an even better job. Thrawn's knowledge gained through his years of the Empire would surely help in this regard. The Empire would have likely been aware of the location of any separatist factories, and Thrawn, as a relatively high-ranking member of the military, probably would have had access to some of that information. This brings me to my next point. Thrawn's greatest asset, in my opinion, is his ability to understand other cultures and factions and to make strategy based off that knowledge. During the trilogy, Mitth'raw'nuruodo is not only several steps ahead of the New Republic and the heroes at all times, but he's able to attack planets based solely off knowledge he gains from understanding their art and their customs. By the time of his defection within this timeline, Thrawn would have been immersed in the Empire for over 20 years. As a master tactician, Thrawn would create effective strategies after spending hours or at most days studying the art and the history of certain peoples. With this again 20 plus years, I'm confident that by the time he left, Thrawn would have an absolutely 100% foolproof plan for taking down the government. We know, based on the type of person that he is, that he would have spent much of his idle time thinking up exact plans to do so. This is true because we know that in both Legends and canon, Thrawn was worried not only about protecting the Empire, although that is more of his focus in Legends, but also about preparing for the Yuuzhan Vong, or as the Chiss call them, the Far Outsiders. I think his understanding of culture, however, also has a secondary benefit. Aliens made up a large portion of the Rebel Alliance. The Mon Calamari especially were crucial to the Rebellion's war efforts. On that note, we know that Mon Calamari cruisers made up a majority of the Rebels' large capital ships. Mon Calamari cruisers take their design heavily from the Mon Calamari's homeworld of Dak or Calamari. While the MC line of ships was heavily modified so it could be effectively used by humans and other alien types, it still nonetheless was a product of the Mon Calamari environment. I can't think of anyone better poised to understand the Calamari than someone like Thrawn. Those I think are the main ways that Thrawn would benefit the Alliance in their fight against the Empire. I'll summarize them all in just a minute, but before I do, I want to look at any drawbacks that the Alliance would face due to Thrawn's departure from the Empire. The most obvious one is that Palpatine would take the Alliance as a more serious threat, I believe. He always doubted the Alliance, and in particular the Alliance's military, which led to the Rebels successfully defeating the Empire at the Battle of Endor. I don't think that he would be as foolhardy if he knew that Thrawn was on their side. It's hard to speculate just how different his approach would have been, but we do know that despite underestimating the Alliance, he was still putting a lot of effort into exterminating them. I think the second thing that the Alliance would run into is that Thrawn is a bit more militant than some of their current leaders. Although Thrawn is a bit more compassionate within canon, in Star Wars Legends, we do see him take some fairly aggressive moves in order to establish military domination. He puts civilians at risk far more than he does in canon. We see that not only during the Thrawn trilogy, but also during the Outbound flight. And on another occasion, he rather coldly executes a subordinate who failed him. I think both of those things, and in particular a willingness to put innocent lives behind victory, wouldn't fly with the Rebel Alliance. However, Thrawn is, above all, a pragmatist. I really believe that he could adapt to the rules of the Alliance and work successfully within their structure. I mean, Thrawn managed to, despite being an alien, rise to become a Grand Admiral within the Empire. If anyone knows how to act and behave a certain way, it's him. All in all, had Thrawn defected from the Empire, I believe that the Rebellion would have managed to take down the Empire more securely and with less reliance on luck than they did anyway. I do think that there's a possibility that it may have taken more time. Thrawn is very patient. I don't think that he ever would have authorized the rebels' attack on the Death Star 2 because logically they should have been defeated by the Empire. I think he would have spent more time whittling away at the Empire's forces, building up the Alliance military, and just generally making sure that victory was guaranteed. On to the second question. What if Thrawn joined the Rebel Alliance instead of joining the Empire? Now, there are some issues with time. Thrawn joined the Empire when they were just starting up, so the Alliance wasn't really around in its full capacity at that point. Let's just assume that he joins the Alliance very early on and remains with the Chiss Ascendancy until a later point. To me, really not much changes in this scenario. Thrawn was already gifted militarily by the time he joined the Empire. It's not like he needed that Imperial training. He spent a lot of time within the Chiss Ascendancy honing his skills, although I do think he wasn't the same tactician that he was later on. There's also that loss of that inside knowledge of the Empire that comes with spending 20 years within the organization, but on the other hand, the Emperor wouldn't be aware of his skills, so he wouldn't have to take the rebels more seriously off the bat, and the rebellion could strike at the Empire before it was fully militarized. Under this scenario, I think that the rebels actually managed to take the Empire down a little bit quicker. All in all, in both scenarios, I give the win to the rebels. Thrawn is just too useful. During the trilogy, he's portrayed basically as a god. He's unstoppable, he predicts every move of the New Republic, and had it not been for his assassination by Rook, he may have successfully toppled the New Republic. To summarize, I think he is successful because his fight against the New Republic showed us that he has several of the techniques down which the rebels used against the Empire. I think he would work well with the Rebel Navy and with the aliens within the Rebel Alliance, and his knowledge of the workings of the Empire and the Navy would be invaluable. Two other things I'd like to very quickly mention is that Thrawn has likely already analyzed the weaknesses of the Rebel Alliance, so in leaving the Empire, he can make an immediate change in the Alliance structure and in their tactics. Second, we see in the Thrawn trilogy that the Admiral is very good at stirring difficulties and dissent within an organization. He rather subtly causes a rift between Borsk Phalia, the other Bothans, the rest of the Council, and Admiral Ackbar. The Empire is extremely bloated with thousands if not millions of officials who are already quite corrupt. I think that they would be a ripe target for those kind of machinations. That is, however, just my opinion. What do you think? How much of a difference would Thrawn have made in the Galactic Civil War? Let me know down in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you'd like to support the channel in the future, consider becoming a patron. You can go to patreon.com/EckhartsLadder, joining the Discord at discord.gg/EckhartsLadder, or following me on Twitter. Thanks so much, guys. Until next time, may the Force be with you.